Team 17 of 52 teams of 8 competitive rival wisdoms that help make humanity wiser and kinder with antique quotes that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. Team quote 17.1. Be as you wish to seem. Socrates 470 BC, 399 BC. This concise statement from Socrates carries profound implications about authenticity and personal development. Rather than advising us to simply appear virtuous, he's suggesting we should actually embody the qualities we want others to see in us. What makes this particularly interesting is how it inverts the common human tendency to manage appearances rather than address substance. Instead of asking, "How do I want to appear?" and then crafting that appearance, Socrates suggests we should identify our ideal self and then work to become that person. The wisdom here lies in recognizing that sustained pretense is both exhausting and ultimately futile. It's far more effective to develop genuine qualities than to maintain a facade. If you want to seem wise, become wise. If you want to seem kind, be kind. If you want to seem competent, develop competence. There's also a subtle critique embedded in this statement. By framing it this way, Socrates acknowledges our natural concern with how we appear to others, but redirects that concern toward genuine self-improvement rather than mere impression management. What aspects of this approach to personal development do you find most challenging or valuable? Team quote 17.2. Friendship that can cease is never real. St. Jerome 347 AD 420 AD. This profound observation from St. Jerome cuts to the heart of what defines true friendship. He's suggesting that authentic friendship has a permanent, unchanging quality that transcends circumstances and time. If a relationship can be easily broken, it wasn't true friendship to begin with. What I find particularly interesting is how this view contrasts with our modern tendency to use the term friend quite casually. Jerome is setting a much higher standard, suggesting that real friendship contains something eternal and unbreakable at its core. The insight seems especially relevant to how Jerome himself lived. As a Christian ascetic and scholar, who spent years in solitude translating the Bible, he understood that genuine friendships could survive physical separation and time. His own correspondence with friends and disciples demonstrated how true spiritual and intellectual bonds transcended distance and circumstances. This perspective raises fascinating questions about the nature of friendship itself. If authentic friendship cannot cease, does that mean the many relationships that do fade away were something else, perhaps just temporary associations or convenient acquaintanceships? It challenges us to examine our own relationships and what makes them endure or dissolve. There's also an interesting parallel here to how many cultures distinguish between different levels of friendship, recognizing that the deepest bonds have a fundamentally different character from more casual relationships. Jerome seems to be speaking about friendship in its highest, most profound form. Team quote 17.3. Wealth is not his that has it, but his that enjoys it. Benjamin Franklin 1706 to 1790. This is a characteristically insightful observation from Franklin that challenges our conventional understanding of wealth. As someone who achieved considerable financial success himself, Franklin's perspective here is particularly interesting. He's suggesting that mere possession of wealth isn't what gives it value, but rather how we engage with and utilize it. What makes this observation especially powerful is how it shifts the focus from accumulation to appreciation. It's a subtle critique of those who might hoard wealth without ever deriving real benefit from it, while also validating those who might find ways to enjoy modest means fully. The wisdom here connects to broader themes in Franklin's philosophy about living well. Despite being a successful businessman and inventor, he consistently emphasized practical wisdom and the art of living over mere accumulation. It's reminiscent of his Poor Richard's maxims that often focused on the wise use of resources rather than just their acquisition. I find it particularly relevant today when discussions about wealth often focus solely on numbers, net worth, investment returns, asset values, rather than the actual enrichment of life that wealth can enable. Franklin is suggesting that someone who truly enjoys modest means might be wealthier, in a meaningful sense, than someone who possesses great riches, but lives in anxiety or miserliness. What's your take on how this perspective might apply to modern attitudes toward wealth and prosperity? Team quote 17.4. The man who has the will to undergo all labor may win to any good. Martin Luther 1483–1546. This powerful quote from Luther captures a fundamental belief in the relationship between effort and achievement. As the figure who sparked the Protestant Reformation, Luther was no stranger to monumental tasks that required sustained effort and determination. What makes this observation particularly compelling is its universality. Any good suggests no goal is beyond reach if one is willing to commit to the necessary labor. It's not just about physical work, but about the willingness to endure whatever challenges arise in pursuit of a worthy goal. The choice of undergo, rather than simply do, is significant. It implies accepting and enduring the full experience of the labor, including its difficulties and discomforts. This connects to Luther's broader theological views about the dignity of work and the importance of vocation. I find it interesting how this perspective bridges the gap between opportunity and achievement. Luther isn't suggesting that everyone has equal access to every good, but rather that the willingness to labor, to fully commit to the work required, is the critical factor in achieving significant goals. It's a statement about human agency and the power of determined effort. This idea continues to resonate today, particularly in discussions about grit, perseverance, and the role of sustained effort in achieving difficult goals. While we might acknowledge that other factors play a role in success, the willingness to undergo the necessary labor remains fundamental. Team quote 17.5. We cannot command nature except by obeying her. Francis Bacon 1561–1626. This profound observation from Bacon, often considered the father of empirical science, encapsulates a fundamental principle about humanity's relationship with nature. As the architect of the scientific method, Bacon understood that our power to shape the natural world paradoxically comes from first understanding and working within its laws. What makes this insight particularly brilliant is how it challenges both extremes of human attitude toward nature, both the futile attempt to simply dominate nature through force, and the equally misguided notion that we can't work with natural forces at all. Instead, Bacon suggests a more sophisticated approach. We can achieve our aims, but only by first comprehending and then working within natural principles. This perspective foreshadowed much of modern science and technology. Whether it's aerodynamics, genetics, or quantum mechanics, our greatest technological achievements have come not from fighting against natural laws, but from deeply understanding them and then working within their framework. An airplane doesn't defy gravity. It works with principles of lift and thrust in accordance with natural laws. I find it fascinating how relevant this remains to contemporary challenges like climate change and environmental sustainability. The solutions to these problems likely won't come from trying to overpower nature, but from better understanding natural systems and working in harmony with them. What makes this insight especially powerful is how it applies beyond just physical science to fields like psychology, economics, and social systems. Any domain where understanding underlying principles is key to achieving desired outcomes. Do you see parallels to this principle in other areas? Team quote 17.6. Our charity begins at home, and mostly ends where it begins. Horace Smith 1779–1893. This sharp observation from Smith carries both wit and social criticism. It's a clever play on the common phrase, charity begins at home. But by adding the second line, Smith transforms it from a comfortable justification into a pointed critique of human selfishness. What makes this particularly interesting is how it exposes the way we often use the first part, charity begins at home, as an excuse to limit our circle of concern. While there's wisdom in taking care of one's immediate responsibilities first, Smith suggests that too often we never move beyond that starting point. The rhyming couplet form adds a memorable bite to the criticism. There's something almost sardonic about how neatly begins rhymes with begins, reinforcing the circular, self-contained nature of the charity he's describing. It's as if the very structure of the verse mimics the way our charitable impulses can loop back on themselves. I find it particularly relevant to modern discussions about social responsibility and the scope of our moral obligations. Even today, we grapple with questions about balancing local versus global responsibilities and how far our circle of moral concern should extend. Smith's critique challenges us to examine whether we're using charity begins at home as a principle of prioritization or as an excuse for insularity. Team quote 17.7. Patience will achieve more than force. Edmund Burke 1729–1797. This concise wisdom from Burke captures a deep truth about effective action and change. Coming from one of history's great political philosophers, it reflects his understanding of how lasting transformations actually occur. Not through sudden force, but through persistent, patient effort. What makes this insight particularly powerful is how it challenges our natural impulse for immediate action and quick results. Burke understood that force often creates resistance and unintended consequences, while patience allows for organic change and natural development. I find it fascinating how this principle applies across so many domains, from personal relationships to political reform, from education to natural processes. A gardener can't force a plant to grow faster by pulling on it, just as a teacher can't force understanding by simply speaking louder. Real growth and change require giving time for processes to unfold naturally. This perspective was central to Burke's conservative philosophy about social and political change. He favored gradual organic development over revolutionary upheaval, not because he opposed progress, but because he understood that lasting positive change often requires time to take root and develop naturally. What aspects of modern life do you think most need this reminder about the power of patience over force? Team quote 17.8. When you doubt, abstain. Ambrose Bierce 1842–1914. This concise advice from Bierce, known for his sharp wit and sardonic observations, offers a surprisingly thoughtful principle for decision-making. It's particularly interesting coming from him, as he was often more inclined to cynical commentary than practical wisdom. What makes this insight powerful is its simplicity as a decision-making heuristic. Rather than advocating for complex analysis when in doubt, Bierce suggests that doubt itself should be a sufficient signal to hold back. It's a form of intellectual and moral risk management. The wisdom here connects to both ancient and modern thinking about decision-making under uncertainty. It echoes elements of the medical principle, first, do no harm, and anticipates modern ideas about option theory, keeping choices open when uncertainty is high. I find it particularly relevant to our current era of information overload and pressure for quick decisions. In a world where we're often pushed to act quickly, even when we're unsure, Bierce's advice suggests that doubt should be respected rather than pushed aside. It's a kind of cognitive circuit breaker that can prevent hasty mistakes. It's also interesting to consider the domains where this principle might be most valuable, from personal relationships to financial decisions to moral choices. When would you find this principle most useful as a decision-making guide? And if you'd like to help raise school test scores and self-confidence, you can give your kids free Easy Extra Advantage math, spelling and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com or buy at educationstopshate.com. Free Easy Math Wisdom workbooks with octo-repetition to grow math self-confidence. You'll get plenty of repetitive practice of age ranges and averages of our 52 teams of 8 quote authors. Free Easy Alpha cipher-coded puzzles teach letters, numbers, and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. Can you decode this cipher quote of encouragement using either our learning to spell or just for fun instructions? And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. We offer printed versions and timed videos with background music, Sign up for free weekly emails of 52 teams of antique rival wisdom workbooks with easy math, spelling, and reading practice. And if you'd like to get paid for sharing our wearable wisdoms, keep this in mind. Everyone I know wears a shirt, and most of us change them daily, so change your shirt and change the world. Social equalities are blatantly subliminal antique positive wisdoms repetitively shared without saying a word. This applies to all our wearable shareable wisdoms, like pretty witty baby onesies and baby tees that you and others will see and read multiple times a day. The same is true with pretty witty kids, but they'll also share these wisdoms with anyone that can read at daycare or school. Youthful truths let your kids gain confidence, sharing antique wisdoms with their friends. Imagine them sharing words of wisdom with classmates and teachers. Therefore I think tees I wear is a super easy way to share words of wisdom that have passed the test of time. Our social equalities help make us all wiser and kinder with blatantly subliminal messages, promoting a more fair and equal opportunity society for all. And don't forget our giftwisdoms.com for birthdays and holidays that makes it easy to share the wisdom with clothing, coffee mugs, and magnets. So do the future a favor by encouraging, educating, and entertaining with words of wisdom that have passed the test of time to make us all wiser and kinder. With wearable wisdoms to fit babies, kids, and adults, you can clothe a whole family, city, or state. Join the 52 of 8 today at 52of8.com.